When you think of an ecosystem, what do you think of? Does it look something like this, a forest? What about a desert, like this? But what about this? Around 60% of people live in an urban ecosystem, and they rely on their city to provide them with all the things they need for their well-being. Ecosystem services are the benefits ecosystems provide to humans. There are so many, from water and food to air purification and even the nitrogen cycle. But there's a service we get from our ecosystem that we sometimes forget about. Education. Education is a cultural service, meaning it is a non-material benefit that people obtain from ecosystems through spiritual enrichment, cognitive development, reflection, recreation, and aesthetic experiences. Ecosystems and their components provide the basis for education in many societies. They teach us about plants, animals, and the importance of a healthy environment. But when scientists study ecosystem services, education is often overlooked, despite its importance to formal and informal learning. A recent study in Australia found that 1 in 4 children don't know where butter or cheese comes from. And this isn't an isolated situation. Kids around the world struggle with this disconnect. It's particularly difficult for those living in urban areas. But what can we do? Surrounded by pavement and buildings, how can they gain this valuable education? Take, for example, 2 kids growing up in separate areas. This is Bob. Bob lives in a rural Indiana town with a low population density. As you can see, he's surrounded by nature. His family lives on a large plot of land. In his backyard, there's some forests, maybe even a creek, and of course this really large cornfield. Whether Bob realizes it or not, his surrounding ecosystem has provided him with a lot of education. For instance, he knows where his food comes from and what happens to plants when they don't get enough water. The creek in his backyard might be prone to flooding, so Bob also understands the importance of flood mitigation. And this is Cindy. Cindy lives in downtown Chicago. It's a large city with a very high population density. She's surrounded by buildings, roads, bridges, and other types of built infrastructure. Without being surrounded by nature, Cindy may not fully grasp where her food comes from or why a healthy ecosystem is important for her health and well-being. But that doesn't mean Cindy is unable to gain this education. Although Bob grew up in a rural area and was provided with the natural ecosystem service of education, Cindy can still gain the same education through anthropogenic means. Anthropogenic is something made by humans. For instance, a local museum may have exhibits about the environment, or there may be a nearby nature center with interactive experiences for Cindy to learn. She could spend time in a man-made park or green space, or even help out with the local city garden. With these man-made resources, Cindy can learn to appreciate and understand the importance of the environment and global ecosystems. And some cities around the world do a great job at providing these man-made solutions for education, but still some are lacking. Let's go back to Chicago. Chicago is home to over 2.7 million people, and the city does a wonderful job of providing resources to supplement educational ecosystem services. It's well known for its many museums and cultural institutions, both large and small. Some of these include the Field Museum, Shedd Aquarium, and the Lincoln Park Zoo, just to name a few. Chicago is also home to many parks. Parks account for about 8.5% of its total land. Since the 1830s, the official motto of Chicago has been Urbs in Horto, Latin for city and a garden, for its commitment to parkland. While it may be best known for Millennium Park and Lake Michigan beach areas, a more educational and kid-friendly spot is the West Side's Garfield Park Conservatory. Tours and programs keep its 6 greenhouses and 2 exhibit halls busy all day. Another beautiful park is the North Side's North Park Village Nature Center, where trails wind through 46 acres of lily pad-covered wetlands and serene woods populated by deer. Community gardens are another great educational tool to teach about agriculture and nutrition. Beginning in the 1940s with the Rainbow Beach Victory Garden, Chicago now has hundreds of community gardens, many of which can be found in parks across the city. Around the world, there are many other cities successfully providing their population with educational ecosystem service. For instance, let's visit Stockholm, Sweden. The city has an extensive park system, and over 40% of its land is dedicated to green space. Another urban area is Singapore. Despite having a population density of over 20,000 people per square mile, Singapore has dedicated over 47% of their land to green space. The Singapore Botanic Gardens were established in 1859. The space includes a rainforest and healing garden. And aside from being aesthetically beautiful, the gardens also fulfill a scientific mission as a botanical and horticultural research and education institution. But that's not all. Singapore has gardens in the sky. Skyrise Greenery is an incentive program created by Singapore's National Parks Board to greenify the expanding concrete jungle. The program encourages rooftop and vertical gardens to increase the sustainability of Singapore's growth. Under the initiative, National Parks covers as much as 50% as the garden's installation costs. Both cities understand the cultural and educational value of green space, and they make it a priority in city planning. But this isn't the case in every city. For instance, one city struggling with park space is Charlotte, North Carolina. In a recent study, only 26% of its population is within walking distance to a park. That means almost 3/4 of children don't have easy access to green spaces to play and learn. Now compare that to Chicago, where 90% of residents are within walking distance. Indianapolis is also struggling with providing its people parks for education. In 2016, a national survey of public parks ranked Indianapolis's park system 95th out of the 98 largest cities in the US. It was actually tied with Charlotte. Okay, I know I should take it easy on Indianapolis. It's not like it's completely failing at providing educational outlets. For instance, the city has a wonderful children's museum and often features environmental exhibits and demonstrations. And this is a common theme in many cities all over the world. While there's always more work to do, cities want to provide their citizens with as much educational opportunities as possible. However, green spaces and parks are instrumental for proper environmental education. Incorporating green spaces into city planning and budgets need to be a priority in order to raise an environmentally aware society. What do I mean by environmentally aware? To me, it means understanding the importance of ecosystem services. It means recognizing the need for sustainable solutions. And just as important, it means putting your knowledge to action. The future is looking up, and the good news is education lends to more education. As we learn more about ecosystem services, we value green spaces and parks more and more. The more we value them, the more green spaces will be integrated into urban planning. These green spaces will provide us with more education, and the cycle continues. All we have to do is be willing to learn.